Hello and welcome everyone to Red Planet Live. I am your host, Ashton Connaughton. I'm elated to be hosting the Mars Society's podcast and leading the conversation about human exploration of the universe and the future settlement of Mars. As a longtime space enthusiast, I am passionate about STEM education and making humanity an interplanetary species. Thank you everyone for joining us today and supporting Red Planet Live. I want to kick off today's episode with just a couple of announcements. You may have noticed that I introduced myself a little bit different. Ashton Zeth is my maiden name, but in honor of today's guest, officially using my married name, which is my legal name, Ashton Connaughton. Besides that, a couple announcements I want to share with you. First, quick reminder, the next episode of Red Planet Live will feature our Mars Society founder and president, Dr. Robert Zubrin. That episode is going to take place at our regularly scheduled time, so next the third Tuesday, December 16th at 5 p.m. Pacific time. You'll see the link to register for that episode coming up here shortly. Next, if you are looking for the perfect gift for your space enthusiast or obsessed friends, family, or you just want to treat yourself, check out the Mars store. It's the official shop of the Mars Society, offering everything from Mars-themed gear, art, apparel, drinkware, and more. These are all special gifts for the space lovers in your life. You might notice there's a couple things behind me that they do sell at the store, like the little Mars globe right there. I have the garden, the Zen garden as well. Love that one. It's on display behind me. So yeah, if you're looking for some holiday gifts for your space friends, check out themarsstore.com. And then lastly, I want to give a quick personal update to all of you. Starting in January of 2026, our broadcast schedule will shift slightly for a couple months. I am expecting my first child, so I'm going to be taking some time off for maternity leave. During that time, Red Planet Live will occur one time per month, and those scheduled episodes will be pre-recorded as well. So just want to let you know we're shifting a little bit. Rather than our 2 times per month, we're going to 1 time, and for a couple months, we will have those pre-recorded. So still want to make the conversation engaging and compelling for you. So thank you for your support and being a part of this community. I'm excited to bring those conversations to you even in this time of transition, and then can't wait for our regular schedule once we get back a few months into the new year. So thank you everybody for that. All right. Well, I'm really excited to jump into the conversation today. And this is a special guest, and I'll tell you why in a moment. But our guest for today is Morgan Connaughton, who is the VP of Marketing and Communications at Rocket Lab, leading global communication strategy and execution for the company. Ms. Connaughton has been with the company since 2017 and oversees Rocket Lab's media and investor relations, marketing, digital and social media platforms, corporate social responsibility programs, and community relations. From leading the communications for Rocket Lab's first orbital launch through managing the media efforts in support of the company's Nasdaq listing in 2021, she has been part of Rocket Lab's many milestones since the Electron program began. Ms. Connaughton has more than 15 years of experience in corporate and marketing communications. Prior to Rocket Lab, she served as a senior account manager at global communications agency Porter Novelli, where she led media relations and public affairs efforts for a range of companies spanning technology, aerospace, finance, and retail sectors. Ms. Connaughton also earned her bachelor's degree in communications from the Auckland University of Technology. Morgan, thank you so much for being here. I'm so excited to chat with you.
Thank you for having me. It's exciting to be here.
Yeah. And I have to share one of the reasons that I was so excited to chat with you, aside from working in, space industry, leading Rocket Lab's communications, we have a lot of similarities, obviously, first being our last name. That's how I originally found you on LinkedIn. Some of the other similarities, background in communications, that's also what my bachelor's is in. You mentioned to me that you got married about 2 years ago and recently welcomed a little girl as well. So we're in a similar boat there, a lot of similarities, which just cracks me up how parallel our lives are.
Maybe parallel universes are a thing and we just happen to bump into each other.
Exactly. Well, it's nice to know I've got a twin down under, and so excited to be chatting with you today and can't wait to learn a little bit more about your background. But before we get there, we're going to jump into the conversation. On Red Planet Live, we do a segment called Question of the Day. Mm-hmm. It's just meant to be an icebreaker. I promise no right or wrong answers. Just want to hear your opinion. So as a fellow communications gal, my question to you is, what would be your dream story or announcement to share with the public?
I'm going to give you a really awful answer and say I have my dream job in announcements. Getting to announce every successful Electron launch, our Escapade missions, the fact that we were building a bigger rocket, that we were going public. I mean, I remember a point back in 2018 after we'd done our third launch where I had a moment of doubt where I thought, gosh, is this going to get boring now? Because we've done a few launches. Everyone's only excited in the first time you do something, right? So am I going to run out of interesting things to do? And that's laughable now when I look back at all that we've done ever since, because it's just been exciting announcement after exciting announcement. So I am one of the very privileged people in this world who can genuinely say that they're doing their absolute dream.
I love to hear that. And I'm so excited for you. I mean, what amazing career and an opportunity, and getting to be involved in humanity pushing the boundaries. So it's so exciting. As you think about the Escapade mission, which we'll get into, do you start thinking about what that announcement is going to look like? Is that too far forward in the future, or already starting?
You mean in terms of when we're at Mars and doing science?
Yes, exactly.
The beauty of a comms role is your planning for something begins sometimes years in advance, sometimes minutes prior if it's something that sneaks up on you. But yeah, you get the joy of planning everything from, when the spacecraft is completed to when it launches to when you first make contact. If you get to celebrate each of those milestones and plan how you're going to do it. So yeah, I mean, am I looking ahead to, to the first delivery of science in a couple of years? Absolutely, I am. But equally, we've hit some milestones on that program today, so we're announcing them today. So there's exciting stuff happening all the time.
Okay, we're going to get to that, definitely, the exciting announcements today. We'll just want to remind everybody that's listening in, if you have questions for Morgan, please put those in the chat. I'll be sure to sprinkle some of those in throughout the conversation. Want to hear from you as well. So let's participate in the conversation today. That is what she's here for. So starting at the beginning, as a fellow communications and space enthusiast, I have to wonder, did you always envision yourself working in the space industry?
Sort of. When I was about 8, I told my parents that I was going to work for NASA. And, I was a Kiwi kid growing up in New Zealand. I didn't know anything about the space industry. My parents weren't in it. I didn't have any influences in it. So I don't know where I came up with that or why. I actually, truth be told, I wasn't particularly interested in space. I think 8-year-old me thought that sounds really cool to say you work at NASA. And then I kind of forgot about it. I didn't study anything to do with STEM. I didn't pursue a job in the space industry. And then years later, through a winding path, I found my way working in it. And we launched our 4th mission, the Alana 19 mission for NASA. That was in 2018. And I had this epiphany moments after we launched it of, in a roundabout way, I guess I am sort of working with, if not for NASA. So I think 8-year-old me did some foreshadowing that I wasn't necessarily planning for. But yeah, I guess as a kid, I did somehow, and I made it happen.
You manifested it.
Yeah.
What would you say to those people like myself that did not have a degree or do not have a degree in a STEM field? They're not technical degrees. They're not scientists. They're not engineers. But they come from a communications background and they want to work in the space industry. What advice would you give to those people?
Every organization and business in the world has comms people. Everyone. Every story you have ever read in the media, every video you've ever watched on YouTube, every piece of content you've ever consumed, there's a comms person behind it somewhere. In someone in some creative field behind it. So whether you want to work in space or anything else in the world, it needs comms people. So that's the way to do it. Now, if you want to go and physically build hardware, absolutely, go do the engineering degree. If you want to design trajectories, go do the physics degree. If you want to be building hardware or designing missions or doing the technical stuff, you've got to go do the technical work. But if you want to be in proximity to those missions and enable them in different ways than necessarily building them yourself, I've got nothing to do with what physically went on that Escapade spacecraft, those 2 spacecraft on their way to Mars now, but I'm intimately familiar with every intricate detail of that mission. And so that level of being involved in space is absolutely possible if you don't want to go down the engineering path.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it reminds me of, a lesson I had learned from Kelly Girardi, who's one of the women that I look up to, and saying that the space industry needs storytellers. They need people to be excited, to be motivated, to be inspired, to be curious about the space industry. And so there is room for everybody that wants to participate. And I think,
Well, I
you've
mean,
shown it well.
look at the biggest space story in all of history that all of humanity shares in is humans landing on the moon, right? Most people's memory of that is of seeing the video of it, is of seeing, photography of that in newspapers. That's comms. So unless there are storytellers sharing these things that are happening, no one knows. So they're absolutely a crucial part of space. And I think my advice to someone that wants to do it, though, is to be in comms and not necessarily go down the engineering path to be in these organizations or these government programs, is you do have to absolutely care and apply yourself. So you can't come in and think, oh yeah, I'll just write a press release, or oh yeah, I'll understand the top level details of something. Like, you need to care enough to understand things at an engineering level to do it justice, because it's really difficult to come from a non-engineering background, understand something that is technical to such a degree that you can then re-explain it back to a member of the public in a non-technical way. You've got to go through that journey of understanding every single technical detail to then go back to be able to understand how you can sanitize and simplify it enough for a public audience. So don't do it thinking that you get to avoid the technical details, because you absolutely do have to apply yourself enough to care and dig into the nuts and bolts of stuff.
Well, I love that you said that, because I remember, times, in college or post-college with, oh, my focus is communications and marketing, and people thinking like, oh, that's easy. Anybody could talk about what's happening. But to your point about, understanding the intricacies of it and being able to go through that journey and explain it to somebody who's non-technical, there's a skill there. So I love that you mentioned that. Credit to those working in communications. And I saw also from your background, being an account manager. That is my day job. I'm an account executive. So there is, something that to be said about having a sales background as well, being able to build rapport with people, being able to communicate and speak on their level so that they can understand, finding some common ground with them as well. I imagine you've done that in your time with Rocket Lab since 2017. You've communicated nearly every milestone. Was there a specific moment or campaign that stood out as a defining moment for you?
Honestly, which one? Genuinely.
It's a good problem to have, all of them.
Yeah. The first orbital launch, so our second flight still testing, definitely, I'll remember that for the rest of my life. It's a team of people working towards what seems like an impossible goal, and they've sacrificed so much. They've poured their heart and soul and life and blood, sweat and tears into something, and to see it work, and just to see that much human effort come together and work flawlessly is a hugely emotional moment. I do also remember, though, a whole lot of the mission team whose job was done because they'd successfully launched. They were having a party and downstairs and yahooing, and I remember my team and I sitting there yelling at them to shut up because we had press releases to get out and our job was only just starting. But once the dust settles after a big moment like that, you do take a moment to sit back and go, gosh, that was bigger than me. And we've just had more and more moments of that. Going public was one, and announcing Neutron. I think our capstone mission to the moon, there's just, I feel like I've had an unfair share of pinch me moments in my career, but I'm greedy like that, so I'm gonna keep aiming for more.
I love it. I have to say I'm a little jealous. I mean, it's like, in addition to us having all these similarities, I mean, you've accomplished a lot of the things that, I would love to accomplish at some point, and being able to have those pinch me moments and, seeing the successful launches of those missions. And like you said, going public. So those are all highlights, milestones, peak memories that you have from your experience. Let's talk a little bit about the challenges. What has been challenging your time? And then, of course, thinking about taking Rocket Lab public, What was the challenge of that as well? Making how did your communications change when you were making that adjustment from a private to a public company?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, I mean, things definitely change when you're public. It's kind of the Wild West when you're a private company. You can say what you want when you want, and do what you want, and more lawyers get involved eventually. But we have a
Mhm.
great legal team, and I like working with them, which is not everyone can say that, so I'm really lucky. But gosh, challenges they're in abundance. I mean, failures happen. Um, programs don't end up, panning out the way that you thought, or you're one of the biggest challenges has been growing a team, and doing it in a really strategic, carefully planned way, so that we can build our comms team capacity without losing the core of our brand identity, of who we are, how we talk about ourselves, our tone, and doing that in a way that we retain the bits that are good about how we've always talked about Rocket Lab, while having a bigger team to do that. Because there was a time when the comms at Rocket Lab was exclusively Peter Beck. And so how do you keep that going as the company grows from 10 people to almost 3,000 people?
Mhm.
So yeah, honestly one of the biggest challenges has been, how do you hold on to your identity and your culture and your narrative and the things that make you good when the company gets bigger and bigger and bigger and in more locations? And it's a fun challenge, because
Mhm.
you got to get creative, but it's definitely been a challenge.
Yeah. And how did the communications change besides having more lawyers to answer to, which I love that you mentioned, because my husband's an attorney. How does that change? I imagine the messaging, the language that you use changes, how you communicate, how do you remain transparent while also, trying to be cognizant that, there are people that are now invested in the company.
Mm. It's a
They're
huge responsibility. You're responsible for people's investment, and it's not something that we take lightly at all. I think it changed in some cases, language had to become more formal.
Mhm.
In other cases, I think one of the biggest one was the change in cadence. Obviously,
Yeah.
you've got quarterly financial reporting, so you have to time some of your announcements and information that you share with those quarterly reports, whereas previously we had a bit more freedom to determine, how and when we did that. Some things before we might have just done a video or a live event or something, whereas now we've got to, do more formal press releases. So
Mhm.
um, I don't know that it necessarily changed it dramatically as much as it just added more layers. So there's additional boxes we have to check. But at the end of the day, being public doesn't change who we are as a company. It's we're still, our mission is the same. Our attitude and hustle is the same. The goals we're all working toward are the same. It's just now we've got a team of investors who are backing us too, which is exciting and a privilege.
Mhm.
So you just have to be consistently aware of communicating with them and keeping them engaged. I mean, this is their company too. So you've got to make sure that they're feeling part of the journey. Yeah, so it hasn't changed it as much as it has just added to it, I would say.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned, earlier you were mentioning when things become routine, when you're having these successful launches, you're thinking, uh, you know, how do I continue to make it exciting? So once what was new and happening for the first time is now routine, how do you adapt your strategy to keep the media, the public, and investors engaged as those launches become more frequent and familiar?
Yeah, that's a good question. I remember the first couple of launches, and it was all consuming. It was everything it's all we could eat, sleep, breathe, do, and it was also front page news. And now no one bats an eye when we launch another mission. So you do just have to get creative to make sure that if there's something particularly unique about that mission, that you're highlighting that. And the beauty of our launches is there's almost always something new. It's a new customer, or there's some adaptation to the vehicle, or it's a unique orbit, or we're doing 2 missions back to back in quick succession, or there's always some reason why it's exciting. And so our job as comms professionals is just to go and seek that out, and tell that story. Yeah, but I think it's you do certainly have to get more creative in terms of, producing content in a way that continues to excite people. Because once they've seen, and I think we're at launch 76, I'll say I'm losing count myself.
Yeah.
We do sit down and go, okay, well, how do we make this next webcast interesting? Let's do live drones. How do we, can we do live crosses? Can we introduce more payload explainers? Do we need to have different camera angles? Is it like what we're constantly sitting down as a team and kind of coming up with new, literally the meeting I had before this was another kind of creative brainstorming session about how we're going to tell some new stories in the coming months in different ways. And so you just have to constantly be kind of coming up with that, which I would say is, and I said this to my team actually this afternoon, comms people are inherently busy, right? We're always rushed, we're always busy, we're always out of time. And I think there's, to some degree, there's a sense of pride in that and being really busy that you don't have a moment to breathe. And I'm going to rebel against that a little bit and say that I think all comms people need to make sure that they are building in dedicated creative thinking time and dedicated creative research time. Because if all you do is focus on the next immediate task in front of you and don't take a moment to step back, see what everyone else in the industry is doing, stare at a wall long enough that your immediate thoughts quiet and you actually get bored enough to get creative. I think that's absolutely invaluable time. So CEOs, if you see your comms people staring at a blank wall, they're working hard. Just let them do it. There's a process.
The creative process. Well, you mentioned that, at one point the Rocket Lab Comm team was Peter Beck, and now you've got a whole team and you're getting to lead that team. There's a reputation for Rocket Lab being fast moving, mission driven. How would you describe the company culture, and what has your experience been like working with Peter Beck as a leader?
I can answer both of those in two parts. What it's like working with Peter Beck, fantastic. He is the most driven person I've ever met in my life, and that is infectious. So I remember after our third launch, we had another mission 4 or 5 weeks later, which now launch every few days, so it's not a big deal. But back then it felt like a crazy short amount of time, when typically for new entrants into the launch market to be doing missions, 6 months apart, 5 weeks felt impossible. Mm-hmm. And I remember we just launched the third mission and I was sitting down, typing away, trying to do my job. And he comes down and he goes, right, I want to talk about the next mission. And I was like, we've just launched this, give me a second. Mm-hmm. And he was like, no, we're on to the next thing and we need to be thinking about that now. And his work ethic, his enthusiasm, his drive, his appetite for making everything bigger and better and just never accepting defeat is absolutely infectious. And that flows through hopefully me and through the rest of the comms team and through the whole company. So, I wouldn't have been here for as long as I have been if I didn't get, that sounds fluffy and like I'm paying him lip service, but I'm not. But I wouldn't have been here as long as if he wasn't inspiring to work for. Yeah. It's not all him. There are a couple of thousand incredibly inspiring people at Rocket Lab, who make doing what we do absolutely worthwhile. But yeah, to have a leader like him who just gets the best, knows how to get the best out of people and knows how to do the impossible is a really special experience. And if everyone got to work with a leader like that in their careers, I think they'd be very, very lucky. Mm-hmm. The other question was about team culture.
Team culture, yep.
We have values at Rocket Lab. One of them is fiercely efficient, and that flows through everything. And the other one is we do the impossible. And, we have bitten off some really, honestly, what seemed like impossible projects, going to the moon on a small rocket with a $10 million budget, building these spacecraft for Mars, Electron in the first place. Everything we've done, everyone said is impossible. And so, and that's amazing to read the stories of outside the company. But when you're in the belly of the beast every day with the people who give up nights and weekends and time with their families and, come up against what seem like absolutely impassable, just challenges and blocks where normal people would throw their hands up and go, oh, well, time to pack and go home because we can't do this. We've been told no, or this is not working. These people will at literally 3 a.m. go, guys, I think I've found the solution. And then everyone will rally around them and they'll build it. And then by the time the sun rises, the thing is fixed. It's incredible. And I've tried to transplant as much of that culture that exists within the technical teams in my own team, because if the technical team is working on something at 3 a.m., then I feel like my team owes it to them to be doing the same if it means we're going to tell the story better or have it out sooner, or the only way they get to talk about their work is through the comms team. So we owe it to them to be working as hard as them, if not more, to be telling those stories accurately and frequently, and in a way that accurately articulates just how incredible the stuff they're doing is. And we've always done a lot with a little at Rocket Lab in terms of funding, in terms of headcount. I think when we made it to orbit the first time, we had something like 150 people, and we'd spent about $100 million, somewhere in that range, which was kind of unheard of. And that same principle I apply to my team. So we've got a small team. It's about 7 or 8 people, and that's video, that's comms, that's graphics, that's everything that comes out of this company that you see externally is fewer than 10 people. And I don't think it would be fair to the teams that have done heroic engineering feats with tiny teams and budgets to throw a 50-person marketing team at it and tell them that's what we need to do to make a video. So my team probably hate me at times, but they'll come to me and say, I need this much money and this much time. And I'll say, you can have half of that and half as much time. And they go, okay. And they make it happen because they're absolute superstars.
That's so inspiring, to hear about how your team is working together and rallying around a similar goal. Everybody's pushing themselves, like you said, giving up nights and weekends and time with family because they're all invested in this same goal or objective in their mission. Besides company culture, what would you say has contributed to Rocket Lab's success? I mean, at this point, Rocket Lab is up there with the other major launch companies. Everybody's familiar with SpaceX, Blue Origin, etc. But now Rocket Lab is one of those that's in that same group, seeing launches more frequently, more successfully, bigger missions like the one we're going to chat about, Escapade to Mars. Besides company culture and those values and doing the impossible, what do you think has contributed to Rocket Lab's success?
Well, I mean, it comes down to the people, right? Businesses are just people. And so if you don't have the right people, then you're not going to achieve incredible things. And we have just managed to collect a group of people who are intensely dedicated and care so much about the work that they do, and are willing to throw themselves at stuff that everyone else says is impossible. So, I mean, definitely the people makes that's. There is no denying that we wouldn't be where we are as a company, have achieved what we have without the people. I don't think you build the team like that without a really forward-thinking visionary leader, and that's obviously what we have in Peter. And there's he and his leadership team have helped give those hard-working, incredibly dedicated people the tools that they need to be successful. So whether that is through funding, whether that is through acquisitions, whether that is through strategic decisions of, say, developing Neutron or whatever, we've got a really steady, strategic, visionary leader at the helm, and that makes it easy for everyone else to build the incredible things that he knows we need to build. So yeah, it's always just people.
It's down to people, yeah, at all levels. Yeah, I mean, I think that's what other leaders of companies that I've spoken to, they've said something similar. It's all about the people and having everybody unified around a similar goal and everybody willing to go above and beyond to make that happen. Let's see. I see we've got a question here, so I want to sprinkle that in. Let's see. Holger asks, do you need to coordinate with NASA on press releases for Escapade, or do you have your own instruments?
So on Escapade, we've built the spacecraft, but the scientific instruments are actually UC Berkeley as principal investigators and NASA obviously as well. So whether it's this mission or any other, we are coordinating with a customer. So whether it's an Electron launch, whether it's a HASTE mission, it's an Escapade mission, sometimes we've just supplied the solar panels, say on something like James Webb Space Telescope. So we would still be coordinating with, in that case, the prime contractor and then NASA for what we can release and what we can announce when. So there's definitely, by the time you see a video that has come out or read a story on a website, whether it's Rocket Lab or any other company, chances are it's been through a lot of different teams to make sure that all the content is accurate. But the NASA team is fantastic. They've obviously some of the best comms professionals in the world, telling some of the most incredible stories in the world. So they're a delightful team to work with.
Excellent. Well, I'm glad to hear that. with all the chaos happening, I'm glad to hear that they are a delightful team.
Oh, they're fantastic. Yeah.
Well, specifically with the Escapade mission, for those that are listening that may not be as familiar, can you give us an overview of what that mission is and what's Rocket Lab's involvement?
Yeah, so Rocket Lab built 2 spacecraft, identical spacecraft called Blue and Gold. It is for a NASA and University of California, Berkeley Space Sciences Lab mission. They're called Blue and Gold because that's UC Berkeley's school colors. And essentially, the principal investigators at UC Berkeley are wanting to understand Mars's magnetosphere. So basically, solar wind stripping away the atmosphere over billions of years and leading to that planet's water drying up. It's a unique mission because it's kind of the first time that you've had these 2 spacecraft flying in orbit around Mars in such quick succession. So they're able to take kind of consecutive measurements one after the other as they go around in a string of pearls kind of formation around the planet. So it's really exciting. It's going to help us understand, I suppose, better kind of the impact that solar winds have had on the planet and what they might say impact future astronauts on Mars, and then also help us understand the solar winds and how they interact with our own planet. So that's really we've built the tools that will enable those scientists to conduct their mission. So those instruments and that scientific work is theirs, but we've built the tools that enable them to do that. So the spacecraft that take those instruments there, and it's a complex mission because we've got to loiter around in space for about a year before we're able to actually kind of head on that trajectory once that Mars transit window opens up. So in that whole time, our spacecraft team will be making sure the spacecraft aren't too hot, not too cold, they're operating fine, engines and propulsion systems are working, they're communicating. It's a tough environment to keep those spacecraft alive and happy in orbit, but the team, it's what they do best. It's a really exciting mission because it was really fast and it's pretty low cost compared to a typical Mars mission. I mean, this audience, more than anyone, will understand just how much it costs to get to Mars and how infrequently it happens. And this entire mission was done for around $80 million. So, that's kind of paradigm shifting level cost of being able to do interplanetary science. And one of the ways we're able to do that is through vertical integration. So spacecraft historically were built with a whole lot of different suppliers. There's no cost over control or schedule or, you've got lots of parts, thousands of parts coming from different suppliers all together in the world. Whereas, we're building it all kind of under one roof ourselves. All the different components and subsystems and then operating it and all the flight software. So, when you're in full control of all of those different components, you're able to control schedule and cost and quality a lot more. So it's been exciting as a kind of proof of concept mission and maybe a follow on to our Capstone lunar mission to say, hey, look, you can do really exciting science on a really accelerated timeline and for way less. And so, we're excited for the science to start flowing, and hopefully more missions like this will be possible in the very near future.
Yeah, everybody is eagerly waiting updates and excited to see how the mission goes. How is Rocket Lab measuring success on this mission? I imagine step 1, launch, which we know was successful from a couple of weeks ago. But what do those next milestones look like as the mission continues?
Yeah, well, I mean, complete mission success is obviously entering Mars orbit and getting into the science collection phase. So there's a while to wait until that happens. But yeah, there are milestones along the way of completing the spacecraft, of integrating them, of launch, of commissioning. So we've made it through those milestones. And in fact, today we just hit another one, which we are yet to officially announce on Rocket Lab platforms, so this is an exclusive for the Mars Society. But we had our first trajectory correction maneuver today on the Blue spacecraft. So that was a little, I think, roughly 13-second burn just to basically warm up the propulsion systems, get them ready for the big TCM maneuver in a couple of weeks' time, which will really kind of trim our trajectory toward Mars. So engine worked flawlessly, burn went really well. We got, all the data we needed, got the performance we needed. So, that's another big milestone ticked off. And now we just look forward to Gold's turn, I think on the 8th of December. So yeah, not long to wait.
Oh, I'd love to hear it. And yeah, we appreciate an exclusive. I'm thinking about the mission for Escapade, and it has some similarities to the Spirit and Opportunity. The twin rovers going to Mars. Was that by design? What was the reason for specifically building the two satellites?
Yeah, so look, this is an area where I'm not the science expert in this, so the UC Berkeley team or the NASA team are better to answer this than me. But generally, I think being able to take those two measurements from, quite quick succession from when a spacecraft passes through, a particular part of that Mars orbit, and then having a follow-on spacecraft measure shortly after, you've got those two data points to be able to measure against. And I think that's really what's driven the twin mission. So it's not out of any sort of homage to previous missions. It is driven by the science, but there is some nice symmetry there, and we'll take that.
Yeah, absolutely. So from a communication standpoint, how do you approach the storytelling of this first of its kind complex mission in a public way for, those that are watching? Again, Mars missions don't happen as frequently as we may like, and they're often delayed, overpriced. So how do we focus specifically on this mission, and how do we communicate that to the public?
So possibly an unpopular opinion, but space comms is no different to any other comms. Comms is comms, right? So you have to look at who your audiences are, what's relevant to them, how you're going to make it relevant to them, how to keep them interested, excited, entertained, what information you want them to know, and then be where they are. So, in some cases, our audiences are, they might be high schoolers who we want to inspire to come and work in the space industry in years to come. So, you develop content and plans around that to target them. And it might, in some other instances, it might be, you're looking to catch the attention of other organizations that might look to do similar missions in future. So you'll tailor content around, how affordable it is, or how our capabilities, have been proven. So, I mean, like any comms exercise in all of history, it's truly understanding who your audiences are, understanding where their eyeballs are, understanding what they care about, and then tailoring different content for that. So, in some cases, our team might write a highly technical white paper that will, be presented at conferences, with a highly technical audience who will be absolutely in the weeds of this mission. And then in other instances, you're dealing with someone, you want to tell them about this mission, and they've maybe never heard of anything from the space industry before, or they have some vague notion that we went to the moon, 50 odd years ago. So you're obviously you've got completely different ends of the spectrum here. And so you're going to produce content that uses different language, uses different imagery, and is produced in different formats to cater to those audiences. And that, would I say, that's actually a challenge in that it's how long is a piece of string, because we could produce content all day, every day for so many different audiences. And you actually have to pull yourself back a bit and go, okay, well, how do we not spend day and night on this one mission when we've got everything else to be working on at Rocket Lab as well, and keep it to just the core stuff that we need to communicate without going crazy on it. Because you could write white papers, blog posts, videos every day. You could just go crazy. There's so much interesting stuff happening in this mission and every other mission that it's just a case of going, what's really important, what's at the core, what do we need to communicate and to whom, and then produce your content around that.
Mm-hmm. Well, I love that you said that, and I hope that there are some of our Mars Society ambassadors listening. Part of our role as ambassadors is to go out to the public and educate people about the space industry, about what's happening. Why is it important for humans to go to space? Why is Mars important? And we have that conversation about tailoring your message depending on your audience. Your messaging for students looks different than
Totally.
adults or those people that think we never went to the moon or it's
Mhm.
all staged on a, sound stage.
I don't
So
pay too much attention to those ones, but yep.
what do you say to those? I have to ask, as a comms person, what do you say to those people who say, "Oh, it's all fake. It was filmed in a studio. None of it's real. We've never been to the moon."
Perhaps I've just reached a point in my life where I go, "Okay, good for you." And then I continue with my day.
You're like, "I'm not gonna argue with you. I'm not gonna try to convince
Yeah,
you. It
you've
just."
yeah, I got bigger fish to fry.
Mhm. Oh, I love that. Okay, well, we'll have to take that approach. Well, there's a couple other missions that we've talked about outside of Escapade. So, one of the questions that I have here is, can you give an overview? This is from a student. Can you give an overview of the current Rocket Lab missions? Electron, Etron, Neutron on there. This is from one of our high school students asking this question.
Gosh, no.
That's an exhaustive list.
There's too many. If you want an update on all of our programs, I encourage you every quarter to listen to our earnings calls. That genuinely is the best way to get an overview of everything that we're working on. But yeah, gosh, what are we not working on? I mean, there's every few days it feels like there's a new Electron mission. Some of those are for commercial partners, some of those are, science missions, some of those are constellations. Excuse me, some of those, and national security missions. We've got HASTE launches, hypersonic testing missions. With Neutron, we're pushing to get to the pad, really, really soon here and get that first initial flight away, which is massively exciting. Gosh, we're building constellations for SDA. We've got commercial constellations in development. We are working on, Victus Haze, which is a Space Force, mission where we're building the launch vehicle and the spacecraft, and we're launching it on 24 hours notice in a responsive space demonstration. So, and that's before you even get into all the programs that all of our, components and subsystems companies work on. So, no, I can't give you an overview because we would be here all day, but there's never not something big happening. So the only way to stay up to date on all of it is read all of my team's work, watch all of our videos, follow us on social media, sign up for the press releases.
Mhm. Well, let's dive a little bit deeper into the Electron mission. So that marked a meaningful milestone for the company. From your perspective, what made it significant, and how did that shape Rocket Lab's trajectory moving forward?
The first Electron mission,
Mhm.
or just the Electron program in
I mean,
general?
we'll go program. Let's go broad.
Yeah.
Broad strokes.
Well, Electron was our beginning, and it's my first baby. We set out to open access to space for small satellites, and that's what we did. There's no denying now that Electron is the world's leading small launch vehicle. There's if a small spacecraft now wants to get to orbit at a specific time, on a specific schedule to a specific orbit, and do so cost effectively, they know there's no question about it. They call up an Electron, and it is the most frequently launched US vehicle annually behind Falcon 9. So it has really become a workhorse of the industry. Excuse me. So I mean that was everything to the company in terms of a pivotal program that proved, we could build complex things that worked, that fit a market need, that we could do so cost effectively, that we could do what we say we were going to do. And that obviously built the trust and the capability in-house that we use to then springboard and expand into enabling, effectively everything you want to do in space now. Rocket Lab can assist with whether you want to buy a single solar panel off us or whether you want us to design a mission, from scratch, and we'll build the spacecraft, design it, we'll launch it for you, we'll operate it for you, we'll build, the software on there, we'll design specific components to meet your needs. So Electron was really the beginning from which we grew all of that. And it's interesting. A lot of people always ask us, well, now that you've expanded so far beyond launch and beyond Electron, because space systems these days is roughly 70% of our revenue. So, Electron was the beginning, but it's certainly not the biggest part of our business, but it is still a big part of the business, and it's very nice for me and for those of us who have been here since the early days, when we're working on missions to Mars, or we're working on the development of a new launch vehicle or some other big project, that our first baby is still going strong.
Mhm. Can you speak to how the missions have evolved from Electron to Neutron? Another follow-up question here.
Yeah, when Neutron is designed to be a different type of launch vehicle serving a different type of need, right? Electron is rapid call-up, responsive, dedicated access to space for small sats. So getting small sats where they want to go, precisely where they need to, in single-digit numbers, really. Neutron is at 13 tons is a much larger launch vehicle designed for entire constellation deployment. And really the market doesn't have a whole lot of competition in that area right now. And all you have to do is look at the spacecraft that need launching in the next 10, 15 years to realize that there's not enough capacity for that. And so that's where Neutron comes in. And we've designed it to be a vehicle that can cater to a lot of different market needs. So everything from commercial constellation deployment through to, national space security launches, through to interplanetary exploration, for NASA and the likes. It serves, in some cases, even point-to-point transport. It's going to serve a lot of needs in areas that desperately need that capacity. And we've proven that we know how to build a reliable launch vehicle that becomes a workhorse for the industry and relied upon, and do so in record time and at pretty record costs. And so we look forward to doing the same again with Neutron.
I love it. Well, speaking of record costs and doing things rapidly and what's available in the industry right now. Question here from the audience. Can you tell us about competing with Blue Origin on Mars communication concepts? Interesting to see how the companies are promoting their proposals.
Yeah, I don't really think of it as competing necessarily with any specific company. It's just a case of, we have all the elements required to do these missions. And so for us, it's a no-brainer that you would give it to a company that has a proven track record. It has the capability, it has the people, it has the expertise, and that's all we can do is share that information, with decision makers, to show if you want to do these type of missions, quickly and cost effectively and reliably. We're the guys. So, it's not really a case of thinking about how you compete with others as much as it is. We've always been really focused on just keeping our head down and doing what we do best. You're obviously aware that there are competitors in the market, but if you spend all day thinking about that, you'll never get your own stuff done. So you've just got to focus on what you're doing.
Missing out on an opportunity to excel with your own missions. Another audience question here, is Rocket Lab concerned about space debris, and are they doing anything about the space junk?
Everyone who goes to space should be concerned about space debris. We go to space in a pretty sustainable way. Those are familiar with the kick stage know it's got the ability to lower its orbit so it gets dragged back into Earth's orbit and burns up faster than traditional sort of large second stages that stay behind in orbit for a long time and contribute to space junk themselves. So, we've kind of designed our launch vehicles in such a way that we leave behind not very much, other than the spacecraft that are meant to go to orbit themselves. But, really, there just needs to be a lot of proactive and collaborative industry and government engagement when it comes to space debris, and everyone needs to work together to manage it. There's no denying that the volume of stuff that needs to go into space has to grow. No one is disagreeing with that. So then it just becomes about how you manage it in a safer, sustainable way, and that requires all parties to act responsibly. And obviously it is in our best interests to do so, because if space is not a functional place, we no longer have a business. So it is in our best interests to be operating as responsibly as possible. And to be honest, it is for other space companies as well. So we're all in the same boat together, as it were.
Yeah, everybody's concerned about it. Another question from one of our high school students. So I'm reading these questions. Let's see. How is Rocket Lab incorporating reusability?
So
high school kids. Thanks, guys.
Yeah. Look, we do. I'm not going to say we do a lot of tours, because now I'm going to be inundated with requests for tours, but we do sometimes occasional tours, sometimes, of different groups through here. And I might anger the adults in the room, but I can honestly say almost every single time the questions that we get from high school students or elementary students are better than the adult groups that we come through. So there is something about childhood and young adult curiosity that we lose as adults. So don't lose that. Keep those great questions. The Reusability. So Electron was designed to be a single-use launch vehicle, and some of you might be familiar with the fact that we wanted to change that and hopefully reuse those first stages. So we spent a bit of time investing in some programs and some R&D efforts to see if we could catch the stage with a helicopter, or could we dunk it in the ocean and bring it back and reuse it, by bringing it back on under a boat. And so, we proved a bunch of those concepts worked. We've reflown an engine that's come back from space before on Electron's first stage, so we've made some pretty big headway in that. And ultimately, we had to make a decision: as do we use those engineers on continuing to pursue reusability on Electron right now, or do we pivot them to Neutron, which is obviously still in an early development phase, whereas Electron is productionized and we're able to produce them at a rate that is, keeping up with customer demand just. So, it wasn't as pressing for us to do reusability on Electron, so we've pivoted largely to Neutron. So that reusability model is quite different in that we're landing it propulsively, either return to launch site or on a barge. And then what's quite unique about Neutron is we will reuse those fairings as well. So normally you throw away the fairings, or you might try and catch them on the way back down to Earth, but they stay attached to the first stage on the whole way to orbit, on the whole way through the mission. So opens up, payload deploys along with the second stage, fairing closes back up, and the whole vehicle launches back on the pad, so we get to reuse everything in one piece. So very, very excited to see that happen.
Yeah. Well, speaking of the catch, we've got another question. How exciting was the helicopter attempt to catch Neutron?
That was a wild, wild day. We have a little live stream studio where we run the launch webcasts. Obviously, I'm sitting in one part of it. You're used to seeing Muriel here be host. She's much better at hosting than me, which is why you'll never see me on a webcast. But I was sitting on the other side of the glass that day with the team operating the webcast. And it's not often that we are either speechless or screaming, and somehow we were doing both on that day because it was just pure elation. And the team knows that helicopter pilot as well, and so it was a big win for everyone to see that happen. And just I can't quite describe the elation of that moment, but it was pretty cool.
Feeling a little speechless talking about it. Yeah. I sense that. Well, let's see. I know we've got a little bit while left. I'm curious. Obviously, this is the Mars Society. This is Red Planet Live. So, of course, we are interested in Mars and getting humans to Mars. So my question to you is, what is Rocket Lab's long-term ambitions when it comes to Mars? Obviously, there's the Escapade mission that's happening now, but beyond that, where does Rocket Lab see its future in relation to Mars?
Yeah, so I think Rocket Lab, I would say we haven't necessarily tied our future or our ambitions to one planet, but actually we have, and we might be, one of the few space companies that spends quite a lot of time looking inward back at Earth rather than out. So we kind of view space as the avenue to help us better understand our own planet and help us improve, how we live on it and its future, whether that be through data or services or research capabilities, really. So what's on the wall in all Rocket Lab facilities is we go to space to improve life on Earth. And that is absolutely true. So, there is a lot to be gained by humanity exploring, other planets, whether that be Mars, or we also have a mission to Venus as well. But I guess that is how we view ourselves as an enabler for people, scientists, organizations, to research more and to be able to deliver insights and capabilities about our solar system back to Earth. So, are we the next company that's planning on, building cities on Mars? No. But, do we have people and hardware and experience that enable others to do that should they want to? Yes. But I think, our ambitions include Mars, absolutely, and they go far beyond Mars as well.
Mm-hmm. I love it. Okay. Not putting all the eggs in one basket. I mean, it would be difficult if you said, hey, our only focus is Mars. We're only going there and back and nowhere else. But I appreciate the values that, hey, we're trying to improve life here on Earth as well, because that's probably probably most important there. Let's see, another question. I'm reading through some of the comments here. One of the questions from the audience is, you oversee corporate responsibility and community relations. What does meaningful community engagement look like for a company pushing the boundary of space access?
That's a really good question. So your audience, the people who are tuning in today, they care deeply about space, right?
Absolutely.
They seek it out. They want to understand missions and hopefully be involved in them. For others, they don't necessarily have that same level of personal interest in space, or they're not necessarily, their world hasn't intersected with it in the same degree. But they might have a launch site in their backyard. And so they need simple communications of, we are going to launch on this date at this time, and this is what it means for you. So, our team has to do a lot of work with those communities around what having a launch site in your backyard does mean for you operationally and lifestyle wise. And then, for us, community engagement actually includes a lot of that outreach, and I suppose you could call it education piece as well, in terms of getting the community interested and excited in space. So that is where we do limited tours of our facilities, and that is where we have some of our scholarship programs, and we have our programs where a lot of our team members go out and speak in schools or at clubs, as well, to kind of spread the word about the exciting work that we're doing and about the industry and about the opportunities in it. So community engagement is a broad term, which means engaging with the community in a way that they need to hear from us in.
What's been the feedback from the community? I talked with somebody from New Zealand. This was months and months ago, but they were proud of Rocket Lab, and like, this is one of those companies that has risen among the other notable names in the space industry, and they expressed pride about Rocket Lab coming from New Zealand.
I mean, it's very different for different audiences, right? In different communities. I mean, the community in Wallops, they have lived near and chances are worked, within the space industry for a really long time. Rockets are nothing new to them. So, they're interested in this newcomer that came and wanted to launch Electron rockets. And so, that was one response and one way we engaged with the community, versus Launch Complex 1, in a country, let alone a community that was new to the space industry. So, there's a lot more, I suppose, background work you've got to do to get people up to speed on what our operations are and what we'll be doing, and how kind of space impacts them. So, I mean, it goes back to our earlier conversation about audiences. It's just different communities have different needs, and we're going to engage with them in different ways. But generally, I can say the feedback has been wholly positive. One of the things I've really enjoyed watching has been, everyone is familiar with launch sites in the US. Fans and rocket photographers will go and set up remote cameras, or will try and catch the shot of a lifetime of a rocket. And New Zealand photographers had pretty much no opportunity for that ever, unless they obviously were on vacation in the States. And now there's a whole kind of community of rocket photographers in New Zealand, and they've produced some really incredible work. So it's been fun to watch these sort of additional communities and industries crop up off the back of our work, creating opportunities for people in an area that simply didn't exist before. So that's been really fun.
Yeah, I bet. Well, speaking of fun, another question that we have here: does your team come up with all the fun mission names?
Oh God. Yep. Yes. So if a customer buys a dedicated launch, which most of ours are, we don't do a lot of rideshare missions, but we do the occasional one, the customer actually has naming rights. So we have to approve it to make sure it's obviously safe for public consumption. But our customers have a lot of fun coming up with names. So sometimes the names are our customers. I think a lot of the I've really enjoyed the theme from some of our Japanese customers around, the different gods. That's kind of a theme that they came up with, and then our team has been responsible for coming up with the names to meet those themes. So it really is a collaborative process. Sometimes customers don't mind at all, and they give it to us to name, which is actually worse because then we've got nothing to go on. But yeah, I think it was fun. It was a fun little challenge when we were in single digit launches and 75 odd missions later. It is getting difficult. But I've seen some of the mission names coming up, and there are some absolute bangers in there. So there are still some really creative stuff coming out, which is fun. But yeah, it would be easier to call them Launch 75. I'll give you that.
Okay, well, some bangers are coming up, so everybody keep an eye out for those upcoming missions. Well, the hour always goes by fast. I can't believe we're already at the time. But Morgan, I just want to say thank you so much for joining me today, for answering all of our questions, for sharing your experience. It's been lovely to chat and meet with you, and I feel more excited and inspired by Rocket Lab's missions, and to be a communications person and continue in this field. So thanks for inspiring me as well.
You are so welcome. Thank you for having me on. It's been a pleasure.
Lovely. Want to make sure I give a special shout out to our executive director, James Burke, our PR director, Michael Stoltz, the lady behind the camera who's always here to help, Leah. Thank you so much. And thank you to everybody who has tuned in for today's conversation. Going to wrap up today like we always do. The best is yet to come. Thanks, everybody.